Hey, what's up, guys? It's K4K Crypto here, and I'm going to go over some light strategy and preparation ideas for launch. If you're still just waiting for PulseChain launch, just like I am, just like everybody is, I do feel like it is very close. We have testnet v4 coming out as of soon. I mean, it's the 19th of April as I make this video, and I'm just going to go over some very fundamental, just things to consider, things to think about when you're making your plans for PulseChain launch day. And so I want to give people some insight so that you make some well thought out decisions. I'm not going to tell you what to do, just some things to consider so that you have the best information possible to make a good decision for yourself. As you can see, mainnet may launch at any time. Richard's already tweeted out saying that you are not going to get a tweet ahead of time telling you, hey, it's going to launch in a week. He's not going to say that. It's just going to be boop, it's out of there. It's out of the bag. So if you're not 100% ready for, hey, it's launched, like if it was launched the next day or today for the exercise sake, and you're like, oh crap, what would I do? Oh man, do I have my segregated laptop ready? Do I have hardware wallets set up? Do I have the keys how I want them? Am I properly secured? Is everything set up? You want to be as ready as possible, and that means being confident in your setup for connecting the necessary wallets and then actually having a game plan for what to do whenever it starts. First thing to consider is get your wallets in order. Make sure you got access to your sacrifice wallet keys. Are you ready to just plug in and start moving stuff, or are you not comfortable doing that? Are you unsure of the security of your setup? Make sure that's good to go 100%. If your setup isn't as secure as you'd like it to be, set up new wallets that you can send your sacrifice address stuff from to a new wallet address with new seeds. If you want to be extra secure, you can have multiple seeds, maybe even multiple treasurers set up so that you can split up your sacrifice amount into different seeds. So even if you completely mess up, and this is just an example, you can split it up into more. Say you have 100 million pulse. You sacrifice for pulse. You send 50 million to one address that's part of a different seed. You send 50 million to another address that's part of a different seed. You can mess around on one, just do whatever you want with that one and leave the other one. You can just leave that as a cold wallet. Worst case scenario, you can only lose 50% of your entire stack if you interact with the wrong thing, you send to the wrong address or something like that. Those are very simple mistakes that do happen every once in a while. Don't let it be you. Be very cautious going in day one. You're going to be adrenaline pumping. It's going to be a crazy, momentous day that you likely won't ever forget. So just make sure you're as comfortable as possible. You're messing around with the testnet. You understand how to use MetaMask properly with a hardware wallet. On top of that, watch for scammers. Watch out for them. If someone's DMing you, hey, here's the link, and it looks like it's a legit guy, it's probably not going to be a legit guy DMing you. If it looks like Richard texted you or messaged you or emailed you, don't click any of those links, guys. There's going to be so many different scams going on at the same time. All you got to do to avoid that is use official sites. And if things don't look right, it's usually because they aren't right. I would err on the side of caution versus speed, especially when it comes to moving large amounts of funds in crypto. Be sure you're actually interacting with the correct contracts and also inputting the correct data into your MetaMask to make sure you're joining the right network. Whenever those details do get released, make sure you're getting them from official sources, multiple things coinciding and they all being the same information. Usually that's the best way to know you're getting the right information. Like whenever Hex went live, Richard posted a video. It was in all the telegrams. He tweeted it, all the right contract address. He even read it out loud. He didn't want anyone getting scammed. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does a similar multiple areas of the same information again, so that you can be sure. Now, if you just ignore that and you only take one because you want to be fast, maybe the one that is your source is a scammer who is pretending to be someone they're not, and you get the wrong information. So don't fall for that. Be extra cautious. So let's talk about a little bit of strategy now. So who do you think are the richest whales coming to Pulse, and what do they hold? What are they likely to sell? What are they likely to buy? I would argue Hexkins and Hex holders and Hex builders who hold other coins that they were able to fund through selling Hex. I still consider them Hexicans who, have impact from holding hex bags and those tokens that they created. So those people are like initially the largest economic whales in the system. And so they've got hex to sell, they've got Hedron to sell, and they're likely to buy things that are other Richard Heart products or things that they're excited about that are going to be launching on PulseChain. So some Pulse native stuff that's going to come out, that's what they'll be selling their hex for. A lot of people will use new money that they're planning to put in because, you know, obviously lots of hexkins are very apprehensive about selling any of their hex. There's still likely to be some selling of hex to facilitate that, but also in leading up to the launch of PulseChain, people are going to be buying hex to get that copy. We already saw a pre-pump from basically 2 cents all the way to 12 cents in like, I don't know, 90 days. And then we've dropped down to around 6.5 cents. So after a 6, now we're down to a 3x. That's still pretty good in the beginning of this next bull market that seems to be starting. But we could easily see that rise to maybe 20 cents, maybe 25 cents leading into PulseChain. But there may also be, it really depends on the timeline and what kind of news comes out at the same time. Market sentiment does matter. Like if it just launched tomorrow as a surprise, obviously we don't have time to run up to 12 or to 20. But I still think a lot of people are going to be FOMOing into Pulse and pulsex and maybe even an incentive token. And what are they likely to be selling? Probably hex, probably Hedron, probably all these other derivatives as well, because everyone wants to get a hold of more of the new thing because they think it has more ability to appreciate because it's brand new. So just keep that in mind whenever you're making your decisions. Now, you don't want to hold Ethereum. You don't want to hold Ethereum or Ethereum liquidity providing, like if you're doing a 50-50 leading into the PulseChain launch, because you're basically going to get diluted and get almost nothing for your Ethereum hold because you only get 1 pulse per Ethereum, and that Ethereum could be used to be turned into any sort of ERC20, and then you get all of those ERC20s copied over without any dilution, whereas Ethereum holders get diluted 1.2 million X, which basically means you're going to get almost 0 value for your Ethereum if you keep it as Ethereum. But if you turn it into, say, Hex or any other ERC20 that you like, you're going to get a lot more than 1 pulse if you were to trade that into Pulse once PulseChain launches. So keep that in mind. If you just have extra ETH laying around, it's like, well, might as well hold it leading into the run up to PulseChain. That's what a lot of people are doing. Yeah, I think holding Hex into the PulseChain launch isn't a bad idea. You get a free copy. It's a one-time thing that's going to happen. Of course, it's definitely a buy the rumor, sell the news type deal. If you see Hex run up hugely right before, maybe don't buy right then. You're probably better off just waiting for a dip at that point. But I think now that we've dropped about 50% from our run up to 12 cents, it's looking juicy, like a dollar cost averagey type of thing leading into PulseChain. Just keep dollar cost averaging. And I think you'll do super well and be happy with that because I think there's still more room to run up until PulseChain. Yeah, I think other than that, be sure you know how to use the bridge, because when the bridge launches, most people who are, making YouTube videos aren't going to be just waiting on YouTube Live all day, waiting for people to come in with questions. Hey, how do I do this? How do I do this? They're probably going to be busy doing their own thing. They're going to be yield farming. They're going to be bridging in their own stuff. They're not going to be live telling you how to do it. Maybe some people will, but, good for them. Very helpful. I know some people and most people, the best strategy is going to be just don't do anything, because most people are going to overtrade instead of making long-term informed decisions. Keep that in mind. Learn how to use the bridge. I have a video on it. Check out the YouTube. Make sure you understand at least somewhat of how to use or access the different websites that are available. The Blockchain Explorer has this apps button that allows you to find the faucet. If there's one for mainnet here, it'd be nice to know how to get to the faucet. Say you don't have any pulse in a certain address that you want to send to, and you don't have any pulse at all yet somehow, so you didn't participate in either sacrifice phase, then you might have to use the faucet. You can also use freepulse.io. Not sure how long it'll take for them to be up. You can get some free pulse there as a faucet. You just click a button and do a CAPTCHA, and you can get some free pulse into any address. If you use a VPN, you can get it multiple times, like in the same sitting, instead of having to wait 24 hours. So there's links in the description if you need a VPN, or if you need a Trezor hardware wallet, there's links in the description with discounts. Check that out. There's also the link to the bridge, and there's also the DEX itself, and then also becoming a validator There's some telegrams that'll teach you how to become a validator. They will use this Beacon Explorer information to track how much yield everybody's earning. You can check it on there. Now, learning how to provide liquidity for these farms is super important pre-launch. You don't want to be wondering, oh, what is the INC token? I've never heard of it. Watch my INC token video if you haven't seen that already. It's pretty detailed, has more information than anyone else has put out there. Now, people want to know what's a good strategy for providing liquidity. If you're brand new to liquidity providing, it's not one of those things where you just throw a bunch of money in it and then forget about it. It's an active position, especially in V2 AMMs, because you're supplying equal amounts on either side. If you put in $100 on one side and you need $100 worth on the other side, whatever the ratio is, that's what you have to put it in. If it's something that you're not excited about holding, like if you don't want to hold INC, then you probably don't want to participate in these INC Pulse or INC PulseX pools, because that's likely to have insane and permanent loss, in my opinion. What's actually probably best for most people is to provide a tiny little bit of liquidity in the PulseX Pulse pool, because you're probably happy to hold both Pulse and PulseX, and you're going to get a little bit of that INC per second. So it doesn't matter how much liquidity you provide. You can put in $1, $1. If you're the first guy in there, say there's only 2 pools at the start. Well, we know it is 1 INC per second spread across the pools in different weights. But we'll pretend each pool, if there was only 2, each one has 50% weight. That means there's 0.5 INC given to this pool at the start, which would mean if you're the first guy in there, you're getting 0.5 INC a second. So every 2 seconds, you get 1 INC. And so that means you're getting 30 INC a minute. You know, INC could eventually become $1, maybe $5 in the future. And so if you're getting that per minute, that's pretty good ROI just for putting in $1 of liquidity. It's going to be at maybe 1-to-1, maybe 1-to-3 ratio in there. So I've been advocating that I think PulseX is likely to outperform Pulse over time just because of that extra buy and burn pressure. And so I think it would be fine to get in at a 1-to-1 ratio. You might not even have that option if the price gets immediately pushed to a certain level. You can also just put some liquidity in, like say you have $1,000 total that you sacrificed. Well, maybe you want to put in 5% whenever you see that it's at 1-to-1 ratio. Then maybe it goes to 2-to-1 ratio. You can put in another 5%. Then you kind of spread your risk out, but you don't want to be putting in like a whole bunch of your LP. I think it's probably safer to put more into the PulseX Pulse pool versus say an INC Pulse or something like that, because I think Pulse is going to probably outperform INC and over time. So you're just going to be losing Pulse as if you provided liquidity at a certain ratio, then say Pulse outperforms INC in the pool. Then when you go to pull out, you're pulling out much less Pulse, but a lot more INC because it's like gone down in value. So you get a lot more of that. It's going to have crazy APYs on here. The first day, the first hour, especially first few days, like even on testnet, these numbers were at thousands of %. Then they dropped to hundreds of %. And now they're getting down below 100%. That's exactly how mainnet's going to go. It's going to be as high as crazy, ridiculous in the first few moments. That's why it's good to have your setup ready. You got your game plan. Write it down. Write down your game plan. You know, calculate how much % you're willing to risk. Put it down ahead of time. I also recommend you set up an address that is just a cold wallet address you're not going to do anything with. It's on a separate seed. You can make it multi-sig. You can make it Shamir secret sharing. You can make it however secure you want to make it.
You
know, you can put an extra special password on it and just send. Maybe you want to put 10% of all of your tokens that you sacrificed and earned. You're going to send them to that address. Your plan is to never ever touch it. Just you're not even going to consider it that you have it. Maybe make it 20% of your bag. It depends what you're planning to do with the rest of your stuff. But that just saves you from complete and utter loss in case you mess up something. At least you have this long-term bag. It's a very good way of getting your mind around like not actually just using your whole bag to do something, like not trading a whole stack of your PulseX for something else and then being like, oh, why did I do that? Now I don't have any and now it's pumping. If you keep 10% or 20%, you can do it all the way up to 50%. Maybe you only play with 50% of your money at all in a separate seed and then decide how much you're going to send to your whatever main DeFi wallet you want to use, and then only use that amount. Don't even access the other funds. Then what you're going to do is decide, this is before it launches, you're going to decide how much am I going to put in maybe an LP pool. Maybe it's 10% of that 50%. And you write that number down. Where's it at? Sacrifice checker. You can already see how much sacrifice credits you'll get. If you put in your address in the sacrifice checker, you'll know, so you can do the percentages now ahead of time, so you're not wondering, oh, what is the math? How many? You already have the number written down. Boom, 20%, that's what I'm going to play with. Then you know how much to send to your address, and you know how much to put into the LP, and you know how much you're willing to risk ahead of time, because all these seconds matter. If there's one INC coming out a second, that's money lost because you took too long to do some extra math. You're missing out on potentially like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in the future. Write down the numbers you're planning to separate into. I think that long-term cold wallet bag is important. I also think separating into multiple seeds is important for in case there's some crazy exploit that no one expects. You limit how much you can be damaged, which is great. Also, who knows if there's going to be some pulsex pools at launch or maybe even in V4. That would be pretty cool. So we're still looking forward to that. I think holding on to pulsex and not falling for the sell early to get a worse ratio than sacrificing people got, I think that's a super troll strategy. Very short-minded or short-term minded. Be sure to consider all of those things. The longer-term holds are Pulse and PulseX and Hex and PHEX, I guess, as well. INC, I would say, is short to medium term. It may have more use cases built on top of it in the future. You can never guess the future. Oh, what if Richard decides to make it the only thing you can use to sacrifice in the next thing? It's like, well, okay, then we'll know that later. That is why some people are gonna start to accumulate this stuff. It's not an always dump coin. People just like to say that, and I don't know why. Of course, it doesn't have some of the mechanics other things have that we know work for price appreciation and narrative, but there's still reason to pick up almost any coin out there as long as it's not like exploitable with admin keys or something, because there's always stuff that can be built on top of it in the future. People will be accumulating some INC. They might also be selling it because it is extra yield. It is an incentive token, so there will be lots of selling of it as well, but that doesn't mean there's no reason to hoard it in the beginning when less people are competing for it, so you can get outsized amounts of it. Because if there does ever come out some extra stuff built on top, won't you be happy when it pumps a lot whenever other people build stuff for it and then announce it in the future? A lot of different tokens that have come out have done that, and it seems to work as a strategy for accruing value into the future for people who are long-term holders. Be sure to consider that as opposed to just selling everything whenever it just came out and then thinking you're a genius because you made like 5% extra money whenever it could have been a lot more. I think that covers most of the lighthearted strategy. You just want to figure out what you're happy holding. And if you're happy holding both of something, maybe it's worthwhile to LP a little bit and just get some of that INC as just free extra stuff on top. I wouldn't recommend these two pools, even if the APY is juicy, especially if you're not a DeFi degen willing to jump in and out at different prices and really game it and really pay attention. If you're the guy who wants to just set something for maybe the first week or so, you want to just sit there and watch it all day, every day for the first few days, then maybe you're likely to join some of these more risky pools. But I don't think most people are like that. They'd rather just get like something that's more like stuff that they actually enjoy holding long term. It gives you a lot more peace of mind holding, I would say, Pulse and PulseX versus INC and Pulse, especially since the way that these LP pools work, you're going to get hammered with impermanent loss in one of these two versus Pulse and PulseX. I don't think you will get hammered as much. Now, I don't think a lot of people are considering this. If you can get your LP in for Pulse and PulseX at a 1-to-1 ratio, maybe it starts at 1-to-1 because that's how they set it. I think it might be 1 to 1.06, and then like that's the ratio. But then people will come in and buy it and then add liquidity and then add liquidity and buy it and add liquidity on either side. But if you're able to get it at that 1-to-1 ratio and you think PulseX is going to be better in the future, but maybe short-term hit, if you get in there early and then you take that hit, you can get all those fees the whole time after it, say it goes to 2-to-1 ratio. As long as it eventually comes back to that 1-to-1 ratio you entered at, you have no impermanent loss risk. And you just earned INC and Pulse and PulseX and fees the whole time with no impermanent loss risk. And you'd actually end up with more PulseX and Pulse than someone who gets in at 2-to-1 ratio, because they have to put in twice as much PulseX at risk as PulseX appreciates versus Pulse. They're actually getting less PulseX back. They're going to have like half as much once it gets to, well, not half as much, but they would have impermanent loss on their PulseX, and probably would have done better just holding the PulseX and Pulse separately, instead of putting it in at 2-to-1. If you think PulseX is going to out appreciate Pulse because of the buy and burn. Just a little extra strategy, something to consider. I think that's everything for the video. Be sure to check out my Twitter at K4K Crypto. There's a Telegram for more advanced people. It's t.me/Pulse Theory. There's also a Discord if you want to join that. Don't forget to subscribe as well. Be sure to subscribe and like the video. I always forget to tell people to like the video. People just forget to. I know you guys mean to. It helps more people find this information. More people getting in means more people, more network effects. We want to reach as many people in the world as possible. So can only do that if you guys make it happen. You guys usually do an awesome job. Really appreciate you guys, and thanks for watching.